Solve trig inequality. Tan x is less than 2 sine x. We're going to solve for the domain from 0 to 2 pi. So the first thing we want to do is move everything to one side, so we have a 0. I'll just pick the left side. It really doesn't matter. What this is going to tell us when we get to the end is what we want are which kind of values, positive, negative. We want the negative. How do we know that? Because this expression is going to be less than 0. Now that we have that, we're going to switch the inequality into an equality sign. And there's one very important thing about this problem, and that is, notice that we have a cosine x on the bottom. So we need to take that immediately and say cosine x cannot equal 0, because we can change sign, positive or negative, at an undefined value. So cosine is our x value. Where does x equals 0? That equals 0 at those two values. So we'll have to say x cannot equal pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2. And we're going to have to make sure we include that when we get to our number line. Now we can go and just solve it normally. We see that we have a sine x that's in both of those, so we'll factor that out. Sine x times 1 over cosine x minus 2 equals 0. Set them equal to 0, so we have sine x equals 0, and then 1 over cosine x equals 2. Just move that 2 over. Now remember, this is 2 over 1. When we have two fractions that are equal, their reciprocals are equal as long as they're not 0. So that equals 1/2. Let's take a look at our unit circle. Cosine on our unit circles are x values, so we'll draw that in. We have two answers there. X equals pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. On the unit circle, sine is a y value. That's going to be a horizontal line. Y equals 0, and we have two answers there. X equals 0 or pi. Now we're ready to set up our number line. And remember, on our number line we have to include all the zeros as well as our undefined values. That's where this one's going to come into play. So we'll have 0, pi over 3, pi over 2. We're just going to put them all in order. Then pi. Then after pi, we'll have 3 pi over 2. From 3 pi over 2, we have the 5 pi over 3. And then we have 2 pi. Let's label the ones that are 0. 0, pi, pi over 3, 5 pi over 3. At pi over 2, it was undefined. At 3 pi over 2, it is undefined. Now we need to determine, is this going to be is it positive or negative in each interval? Now not all of these are particularly easy, so let's see what we can do with this. We can use our calculator to help us here. But what I really want you to do is I want you to understand the basics of this and how to go about doing this and not just using our graphing calculator. So we need to pick a value in every single interval, and it doesn't matter which value we pick. We could pick things like between 0 and pi over 3. We could either pick pi over 6 or pi over 4. Just because of the tangent, I'm going to pick pi over 4. Now between pi over 3 and pi over 2, there is nothing that's nice. Now we can check and see pi over 3 is going to be a little over 1, and we know that pi over 2 is 1.57 approximately. So how about pick something like 1.4 in here. We'll see if we can figure that out. Most likely we're going to have to use our calculator for it. Between pi over 2 and pi, we can use a number like 3 pi over 4. Between pi and 3 pi over 2, we can use a number like 5 pi over 4. And I think what we'll do is start seeing a pattern in there, and hopefully our calculations will be a little bit easier. Between 3 pi over 2 and 5 pi over 3, there's nothing again, so we're going to have to estimate that. This is 4.71 approximately, and then this is going to be, see, 3.14 divided by 3 times 5, somewhere about 515, so 4.7, so something like 5 will work. And then over here we could pick 7 pi over 4. Since 2 pi is not a 0, we could use that as well, even though it's not in our domain officially. But some people don't like that type of thing. Now let's see. I'm going to move this up a little. Start plugging in some of these things. We'll have for the pi over 4, x equals pi over 4, we'll have tangent of pi over 4 minus 2 times the sine of pi over 4. That's going to equal 1 minus 2 times root 2 over 2. So in other words, 1 minus root 2, and that is negative. So we put a negative mark there. Now we don't really have something good there. So let's take a look and just type it in. So I want to say tangent, turn it on first. Still have that problem. Tangent of 1.4 minus 2 times the sine of 1.4, enter, and that gives us a positive. X equals 1.4, and then the value we had 3.8, and so that's greater than 0. We have a positive. 3 pi over 4 we could do. Tangent of 3 pi over 4 minus 2 times the sine of. Tangent of 3 pi over 4 is negative 1 minus 2 times, again, root 2 over 2. The sine of 3 pi over 4 is positive. That will give us a negative number. We don't really have to simplify it like I did up here. We just need to make sure we know if it's positive or negative. 5 pi over 4, we would have tangent of 5 pi over 4 minus 2 times the sine of 5 pi over 4. Tangent of 5 pi over 4 is positive, it's in the third quadrant, minus 2 times, again it's in the third quadrant, so it's negative root 2 over 2. So this time we'll get 1 plus that value, and we get a positive. As far as the 5 goes, we're just going to need to type it in. And that is a negative value. 7 pi over 4, if we can, since I've written all those ones, 7 pi over 4 will end up being negative 1 here, minus 2 times root 2 over 2, give us negative 1 plus square, and that'll be a positive. So we already wrote what we want. Emphasize here, we want the negative numbers here. So what intervals is this negative? We don't want the zeros, just the negatives. So x, our solution, we'll put it in interval notation, will be between 0 and pi over 3. So remember, that's an open bracket or parentheses, 0 to pi over 3, and then union with. Now in this one, since I had it as the problem as a strictly less than, we don't need to worry about these undefined values. And I can address that in a little bit. This next interval will be pi over 2 to pi. That's this one. And then the last one will be 3 pi over 2 to 5 pi over 3. And there's our solution. Let's adapt this just a little bit. What if our problem was tangent of x is less than or equal to sine 2x? Everything else would be the same, but this time what we would want is the negative or 0. So we would have a bracket pi 0 to pi over 3 union with, now this is what I wanted to point out, so no matter what on the pi over 2, since that's undefined, that has to be a parentheses. It has to be an open on that side. But the pi part is a 0, and we want the 0, so we include that. Union with 5 pi over 3 is a 0, and then 2 pi, actually I was doing the wrong interval there. It would be 3 pi over 2, and that would be a parenthesis, comma, 5 pi over 3, and that would be a bracket. That's it.